A Complete Unknown is the latest historical biopic that critics have fallen in love with, charting the early days of Bob Dylan's career as he rose to stardom as the leading voice in America's folk music scene. The film takes place throughout the early 1960s, as Dylan first made a name for himself and brought folk music into the mainstream for arguably the first time. A Complete Unknown is a fairly accurate biopic that stays true to Dylan's music and legacy while introducing his career to a new generation. Although he's now considered one of the greatest songwriters of all time, there was a time when Bob Dylan was viewed as a much more controversial figure. Folk music wasn't particularly well respected in America in the early 60s, and he was among the first people to bring these unique country sounds to popularity in New York City. However, the evolution of his career was an especially turbulent one, and many of the artistic choices that he made were met with criticism. This is something that's thoroughly explored in A Complete Unknown's ending, with his performance at the Newport Folk Festival. Some believe the crowd booed Bob Dylan because he played electric guitar. Dylan had seemingly turned his back on folk music. When performing at Newport in 1965, Bob Dylan was promptly booed off stage after just a few songs. The main reason for this reaction is historically understood to be the musician's transition away from acoustic folk, which initially made him popular, to electric folk rock. Dylan took to the stage with a sunburst Fender Stratocaster, which offered a completely different sound to his usual acoustic music. This was widely seen as Dylan turning his back on folk music and embracing a more commercial sound. Ultimately, the decision to go electric turned out pretty well for Bob Dylan, despite the criticism that he faced. After the Newport Folk Festival, Bob Dylan released his greatest albums yet. His more modern projects such as Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61 Revisited, and Blonde and Blonde were the works that made Dylan the superstar he ended up being, while later albums such as Blood on the Track saw him fully transition into that electric sound. Others say Bob Dylan was booed due to sound issues and a short set. Al Kooper believes fans just wanted more Dylan. Bob Dylan plays with his band in A Complete Unknown photo courtesy of Searchlight Pictures. However, this isn't the only theory regarding the poor reception to Dylan's Newport set. Speaking with OpenVault, musician Al Kooper, who performed alongside Dylan in 1965, claimed that most audiences were simply upset by the length of the performance. Dylan only played 15 minutes, in comparison to some lesser-known artists playing up to 45, and the fans were allegedly displeased. Cooper said that Bob Dylan comes out and plays 15 minutes, and they all went nuts. Not because he played electric, but because they'd paid all this money and heard 15 minutes of Bob Dylan. In truth, the controversy surrounding Dylan's Newport set was likely a combination of the two. While the performance was short, there were certainly discussions about his decision to play an electric guitar, and this defined the rest of the musician's career. It's something that's briefly explored in A Complete Unknown, though the film centers mostly around his career before Newport.